Call the adjourned meeting of the Paramount City Council to order. Can we have a roll call, members, please? Council members?
Councilmember Guillen?
Here.
Councilmember Lemons?
Here.
Councilmember Martinez?
Here.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer?
Here.
Mayor Hansen?
Here. We have two presentations to do, so colleagues will join me down at the podium there. Hello, everyone. Tonight we're here making note of two special observances during the month of May. First off, May is National High Blood Pressure Education Month. This raises awareness about the impact of hypertension and aims to reduce death and disability related to high blood pressure through public outreach. At this time, we also want to recognize the folks from AppleCare for the work they do in our community. They perform a number of health screenings at various city events, including blood pressure readings. They led the Healthy Paramount initiative last year and are consistent donors to our senior Thanksgiving luncheon. In short, they are dedicated to the health of our residents. Tonight we have Lupita Gutierrez and Lupe Salazar from AppleCare to accept the city's proclamation. Would you please come forward?
I'd like to thank you all for allowing AppleCare to provide the services that we're able to provide to the city of Paramount. I know Brenda would have loved to be here, but she's not able to, and we come to represent AppleCare. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
And National Public Works Week is celebrated from May 19th through the 25th. This year's theme is It Starts Here. This is a reference to the many facets of modern life that grow out of the efforts of public works professionals. The staff of our own Public Works Department does an outstanding job in keeping Paramount running smoothly and in good shape. From taking care of our streets and parks and landscaped areas to maintaining a safe and secure water system, and so much more. We appreciate their professionalism and commitment. As we celebrate National Public Works Week, we also recognize their fine work. So thank you for Public Works. We appreciate your efforts. Okay, City Council public comment updates.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, we do have two updates from the May 7th meeting 2 weeks ago. The first one was resident Ms. Rebecca Guillen. She requested that the city look into allowing gardening boxes in residential areas to be used for agricultural purposes. Our action is that staff is researching this and including obtaining information from other cities as well, and we'll report back to the City Council at a later date. The second item, the second speaker at the May 7th meeting was from Ms. Gloria Fernandez, and her issue was public safety issues in the Orange and Century neighborhood. The requests for patrols were forwarded to the Sheriff's Department as Lieutenant Oscar Barragan was present at that meeting. And we also held a neighborhood watch meeting last Saturday, May 18th, for both the neighbors of Paramount and Southgate, the Hollydale area. So with that, that concludes the council comment, public comment updates.
Okay, thank you. And do we have any public comments?
Yes, sir. We do have one tonight from Ms. Andrea Crow at the Paramount Library. And Andrea?
Andrea?
Mayor Hansen, council members, and the City of Paramount. This week, Paramount Library will be hosting 3 events that are filled with fun and learning. On Thursday, May 23rd at 4 p.m., MakeMo will be at Paramount Library, inviting children ages 7 to 12 to participate in cardboard construction. If you can imagine it, you can build it. Children ages 2 to 5 and their caregivers are invited to enjoy books, songs, rhymes, and movement at Smarty Pants Storytime on Friday, May 24th at 10:15. And on Saturday, May 25th at 1 o'clock, we have a special Ramadan story time. Children ages 5 to 12 will learn about Ramadan through stories and a special art activity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's no further public comment? No further. Okay, fine. Okay, consent calendar, item number 3, ordinance number 1114, adoption.
Move it.
Second.
Moved by Lim and second by Hoffmeyer. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Hansen.
Yes. Item number 4, installation of a disabled parking zone in front of 15949 George Avenue. Can we have staff report, please?
Yes, sir. Our latest disabled parking zone comes to us from the Georgia Monroe area. With that, I'll turn it over to our Public Works Director, Ms. Adriana Figueroa, to handle the item. Adriana?
Thank you, John. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we have received a request from Mr. John Selby for the installation of a disabled parking zone in front of his home at 15949 Georgia Avenue. He is requesting the zone because of limited accessible parking options in the neighborhood. Staff has inspected the site and found that neighborhood on-street parking is in fact limited. The location, as you see on the screen, is located on Georgia, south of Alondra, and north of Monroe. The residence does have some off-street parking via a driveway at the rear of the property. However, the driveway is too narrow to provide ADA accessibility to 2 vehicles, as both Mr. Selby and his daughter each have a valid disabled parking placard. Staff also verified that there are no other disabled parking zones on that block. If approved tonight, approximately 15 feet of curb would be marked for disabled parking only and available for use to anyone with a disabled person placard. At their May meeting, the Public Works Commission reviewed this item and recommended approval of this request. A notice indicating the council would hear this item this evening was sent to all properties on Georgia from Monroe to Alondra. And that concludes my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions?
Make a motion to approve the item.
Second.
Been moved by Hoffmeyer, second by Lemons to approve the application. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Hansen.
Yes. Item number 5, applications for firework permits for 2019. We have staff report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, fireworks season is upon us once again, believe it or not. Our municipal code does require the City Council to approve of any applications for fireworks stands. For a number of years now, we've had the same groups apply to us to sell the safe and sane fireworks in Paramount. So here's our Assistant City Manager, Kevin Chun, to tell us who these groups are and other details about the fireworks. Kevin?
Yes, thank you, John. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, indeed it is that time again to review our applications for fireworks permits. As you know, there are 8 nonprofit organizations that are eligible to sell safe and sane fireworks in the city. All have submitted applications to do so again, and all will be using the same locations for their fireworks stands as they did last year. Per our requirements, each of the stands will be at least a quarter mile apart and will be restricted to conduct their sales between 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. from June 28th through July 4th. The 8 eligible organizations are Church of God Prophecy, Downey Avenue Foursquare Church, the Elks Club, Emmanuel Reformed Church, First Assembly of God Church, Knights of Columbus, the Lions Club, and Praise Chapel Paramount. Fireworks sales is the primary fundraiser for each organization. In order to sell fireworks, they will be required to obtain a city permit and follow all applicable local and state laws related to fireworks. So with that, staff asks your approval of the 8 applications, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions?
I have a question. Are we one of the only last cities that permit fireworks? Who are the ones surrounding us that still allow fireworks?
I don't know offhand. There are other cities around us that do allow fireworks sales. I don't have unfortunately, sorry, I don't have a list right in front of me.
Okay, and then my other question is with the sheriff's department, with all the illegal fireworks, does having the legal fireworks cause more illegal fireworks does it make it harder for them to apprehend those who are firing off all the illegal fireworks? Have we ever conferred with the sheriff's department to see if having the legal fireworks makes it harder to detect those who are doing the illegal fireworks? Because it is a huge problem in Paramount.
All over.
You know, I've worked fireworks suppressions for many years. Usually we're able to determine, you know, which fireworks are safe and sane and not. If people are using safe and sane, you know, we can go up to we go up to them just to verify. And once we determine that they're illegal, that's when we take action.
So it's not causing any more difficulty than any other?
I wouldn't say it does.
Okay.
Council member Gann, some of the surrounding cities off the top of my head that I know have it are City of Bellflower, City of Lakewood. And last year, with our with our fireworks suppression, deputies cited 40 people for illegal fireworks. And then in addition to that, we're going to do something different this year. We're actually going to have electrical boards, letting people know that the fine is $1,000 for the use of illegal fireworks.
Okay, and then I was just wondering if in the future we could do some firework safety for like the kids in the neighborhoods. I think it's just really important to let them know the dangers even of using safe and sane. I think that would be something good for the future.
Absolutely, I'll put it down for our next
you.
educational campaign.
Make a motion that we approve this item.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, moved by Martinez, second by Hoffmeyer to approve the fireworks applications. We have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemmons,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Hansen.
Yes. Item number 6, ordinance number 1113, introduction. Adopting a citywide sidewalk vending program in order to comply with updated provisions of state law regarding sidewalk vendors. We have staff report.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor and Council. In November of last year, we presented to you an item about Senate Bill 946, which is now law. The law went into effect January 1st and made it permissible to sell food and other retail items from both a mobile and stationary cart. In other words, by state law, cities can no longer make it illegal to sell products from a cart. However, cities can adopt ordinances that regulate where, when, and how sidewalk vendors can operate. Before I turn it over to our city attorney, Mr. John Kavanaugh, to handle the item, I want you to know that this ordinance before you today, it does its best to address the city council's long, deep desire to protect the public health, safety, and quality of life for our community, while at the same time not violating state law. So now I will turn it over once again to our city attorney, Mr. John Kavanaugh, who will handle the item. John?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Okay, I know what you're thinking. This is a 21-page ordinance. We're going to be here till 10 o'clock as I go through everyone. No, I
Remember, I
will not.
limited your
Do not
time.
worry, okay? I'm going to explain to you why the length of the ordinance as it is, but it'll be really brief as to why, so we don't have to go into detail on it. But essentially, again, 946 was enacted into law. There's 2 reasons why we're bringing this ordinance in front of you. Number 1, state law requires it, and number 2, even though the city of Paramount really doesn't have a quote-unquote crisis of vendors within the city. We want to make sure that we take a proactive approach so that if and when that time comes and there is an influx, we already have something on the books that we can address. And in fact, even now, our public safety director, Adriana Lopez, we have put together a brochure and a pamphlet so that anyone that even comes in right now, we give them that as a way of educating people so that when this comes out and becomes effective, everybody will know up front what will be required of them. So we're ahead of the curve here already. Let me tell you basically what SB 946 says we can't do. Let me just tell you what the general rules under that statute. The statute basically says we cannot prohibit sidewalk vending in any city. That's the general rule. No prohibition. Okay? What it says, as a result of this, says you cannot prohibit it, and number two, it decriminalizes sidewalk vending. So in other words, it's not in violation of any penal code section or any criminal law section provision of state law. So it just can't be penalized from a criminal standpoint. With that said, here's what it says we cannot do. We cannot prohibit sidewalk vending activities in the city at all. We cannot require a sidewalk vendor to operate within specific parts of the right-of-way except when that restriction is directly related to health, safety, or welfare concerns. We cannot restrict the overall number of sidewalk vendors permitted to operate within the city unless the restriction is directly related to health, safety, or welfare concerns. We cannot restrict sidewalk vendors to operate only in designated neighborhood areas except when the restriction is directly related to objective health, safety, or welfare concerns. We cannot impose criminal penalties for violations of sidewalk vending ordinances and regulations. In fact, the city can only impose administrative fines for violations. That means we cannot confiscate vending carts, we cannot take their merchandise, and we cannot drive them out of the city. I want to emphasize that. We cannot ban them in our parks, and we cannot require vendors to ask permission from adjacent businesses to operate. What does that mean? It means if a vendor wants to put their cart in front of an established flower shop, we cannot restrict that. Now, when I say that, that's what it says we cannot do. But notice the operative words: except, unless, except public health, safety, and welfare, okay? Those are critical operative words. Remember I went back and I said, hey, this is a 21-page ordinance. Well, most of the provisions in this ordinance fall within the except, unless language, okay? And the reason why is that we have to establish objective criteria in order to restrict them, okay? So even though the code, state law says you cannot prohibit them at all, unless or except you make specific findings as objective criteria. We did that. We submitted, our office submitted to the various departments in the city and said, give us some feedback on what that criteria, what you think it is, including the parks. They sent us that criteria. We felt comfortable with it to the extent that it was within the confines of the law, and we included it into the ordinance. And that's why it's a little voluminous, because it's very objective. If someone says, hey, you cannot do that, we want to be able to say, well, we can because, okay? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So what we have done is we've gotten our current code under Chapter 36, I believe it was. We had some regulations in there, but they didn't comply with the new state law provision. So what we're introducing to you is that we're repealing that chapter and replacing with this. Just as a footnote, there's some language under Chapter 36 that talks about, the food truck vendors that come in. We're going to be presenting you a separate regulatory ordinance when it comes to those. We didn't want to confuse everybody by lumping them both together because they're two separate. So this repeals old Chapter 36, including our previous regulations of the truck ones, but we're going to have to redo those anyway. We're going to present that back to you, okay? So what does the proposed ordinance does? It does exactly what the state law says. It provides the objective criteria. In essence, we have certain distance requirements on the public sidewalks. We obviously don't want vendors like in the envelopes of driveways because that will block pedestrian. We don't want vendors in areas where there's disabled, handicap, or ADA issues. So we want to make sure there are distance requirements. That we have in residential zones, the law says that we can prohibit the stationary vending facilities, if you want to call them, that, that's set up as a temporary structure. We can say you can't have those in residential, but the mobile vending carts, you can, but again, they're under time, place, and manner. Like, you can't have them operating at night. And two, obviously, if someone in their home puts up a sign says, we don't want vendors coming on my property, that operates. It's kind of like a no trespass sign or no solicitation sign that says that. One of the major requirements that we're having to do is we're requiring all vendors to apply for a business license within the city. That's going to be pretty much administered through our finance department like we would with any business. And in the ordinance, we establish our criteria, which is very similar that we would with any business as to what we would ask information for when they fill out an application for a business license. One of the things that is going to be a challenge, and really this type of activity, the state has made a decision that vending businesses are a critical part of California in small businesses, and that's what they're classifying as a small business. And that's why they want to basically make them legal and prohibit cities from driving them out. Now, if you look at the large cities like LA, San Diego, San Francisco, you will see these type of vendors just everywhere. It's rampant. Even before this state regulation came along, those big cities really couldn't control them. And I think that's probably what precipitated it, was basically these big cities said, look, we can't control them, so let's allow them. And so the state, in its divine wisdom, paints a really broad brush and says, okay, we're going to allow them in every city, even small ones and big ones. I think that's what happened. But one of the things we want to do is that we want to have a business license requirements so that we can keep track of them. The second thing that we're asking for is, when we think of vendors, sometimes for some people, we think of vendors, they're selling the food carts, okay? Ice cream, cones, hot dogs, things like that. But also, they're also selling merchandising, okay? Flowers, trinkets, things like that. We don't have so much of an issue from a health issue with merchandising because it's just merchandising. The bigger issue is of vendors selling food, okay? Now, the cities we don't have any jurisdiction to regulate how food is. That's the county health department, okay? So what we decided to do was we wanted to make sure that before we granted a business license, that the vendor who's going to sell food has already received a permit from the county health department saying that, hey, we signed off on it, okay? So it's not an after effect. We wanted to make sure that the county okayed it and gave a green light to them and gave them permit, and then that permit has to be presented to us, the city, before we would give a business license. And like all county permits and business licenses, all vendors have to make sure that both those permits are displayed visibly so that anybody can see it and say, hey, I want to see your county permit, and they have to show it, or it's right there, okay? It's like when you go to a restaurant, you see the little signs. That means the county did that. It's the same thing here with a business license. Any person would be able to go up there, not asked to see it because it should be visible right there, okay? That's one of the things we want to try to do is keep track on it. You know, one of the difficulties of this type of regulation is that, especially with mobile vendors, it's very hard to track them because they can be in one place and then the next day they're someplace else, okay? So part of the requirements that we're trying to, the objective is to make sure that we have a database of them so that when they are at different places, at least we know this is how many we have, okay? And that's basically one of the objectives of trying to do that. We obviously want to have some restrictions on what they can sell. Obviously, no cannabis, no alcohol, and obviously no tobacco. So we want to restrict that. But when you see this in the context of the technicalities, you'll see that there's a lot of objective criteria that the various departments have set up. Now, here's the challenge. That's all great and said and done with respect to having this type of a regulatory ordinance. I think we've exhausted it. We've pretty much set up a pretty good regulatory program to allow them in. The problem now is because the state has taken a position that it both decriminalizes it, we cannot, any violation of our ordinance, we cannot prosecute them for either an infraction or a misdemeanor, okay? Unlike a brick and mortar food establishment or commercial establishment, which we can if they violate ordinance, vendor businesses, we cannot. There only is one remedy that we have as a city. We have administrative citations. That's the only thing that we can do. So if a vendor is in violation of any of the regulatory provisions, like the distance requirements, all we can do is cite them. Administrative fine, and it's usually a $100, $300, $500. But the way state law works is that you can only go up to the $500, and if they're up, let's say you have one vendor that is violating a lot of provisions and they're up to the $500 and every day is a separate violation. After 1 year, you start back again to 100. So it doesn't keep going up, okay? If you don't have a business license, that's a separate fine, an administrative citation. Those are a little bit higher, but the same constraints, time constraints. But one of the challenges is going to be, well, what if they don't pay the fine? Well, there's really nothing you can do. We can revoke their business license, and we can say you can't have a business license, which means you cannot operate. But the best we can do is just cite you, okay? And if they're moving around all the time, it's going to be a little more difficult because you got to find them. That is one of the things that we're hoping that at some point state law is going to look at this, because keep in mind, this just become effective this year. A lot of cities are grappling with how do we deal with this? And the fact that there's only one remedy, what if there's just no compliance at all? I think what's going to happen is hopefully the legislature will see a year's worth or whatever of enforcement and maybe make some changes and say, okay, you know, I don't anticipate so much in the smaller cities like ours. I think the bigger cities maybe, but I think in the smaller cities you're going to have better compliance, and that may be all there's need. But we don't know for sure. This is kind of a pilot program, if you will, and there may be some legislative changes. So this ordinance, even though it's introduced and you're considering, and you may adopt it, hopefully, you may see changes down the line in the next year or so, depending what the state does. So that's basically a summary of this ordinance. So with the 21 pages is basically more of those specific findings. We're asking you to consider that. We want to be a little more proactive. We have the pamphlets that have already been done. As I said, Adriana Lopez has gotten those, and they're being circulated around to those that are coming in. And when this gets adopted and finally effective, I think we can be ready in the event that there's more. So our recommendation is that you would introduce this ordinance and place it on the next agenda for adoption, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions?
John, so this bill only pertains to sidewalk vendors, not the, you mentioned the food truck vendors, that's separate?
I'm sorry?
This bill only pertains to sidewalk vendors,
Mm-hmm.
but does it pertain to food trucks?
No, it does not.
Okay.
That's going to be something that we're going to be presenting to
separate.
you later.
Okay,
Any of the
yes,
food
okay.
trucks that park on the street, for, a certain period of time, then they move on. That's a different subject matter.
Okay, because last night, there was a truck driving through my neighborhood, and the lady was speaking through a microphone, stating she had tamales and peanuts and fruits. I'm thinking, is that
Right.
so? Okay, it's not under this.
Yeah, that's
bill.
going to be,
So it's
now,
just, okay, be separate.
yes, and that's a good point, council member, because even under this one, even some of the, maybe the stationary vendors or the push cart ones,
Yes,
sometimes they will have audible things that they have.
yes.
That's going to be restricted under this ordinance, okay? So we don't want to really see that, especially in residential.
Thought there was an emergency. I ran outside.
Yeah,
and I-
but the
okay.
food, the mobile or the vehicle trucks, those are going to come back, and that's going to be one of the
Okay.
things we're going to be addressing.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
John.
Further questions?
I have a comment, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes?
I just want to say that I think you did an excellent job writing this ordinance. Every time, this is something that I think has so much potential for so many problems. And as I was going through and reading it, every time I'd make a note in the margins, oh, we need this and we need that, then it would be in the next paragraph. So I just wanted to compliment you that I think you did an excellent job in anticipating so many issues that we're going to have.
Thank you, Councilmember Lemons, appreciate that.
Any other questions? I have one. No others? On the county deal, as far as food vendors would be concerned, is that going to be graded like restaurants with the A, B, and C placard that they have to post, or is it going to be something different, or do we
I
even
think it's,
know?
I might be wrong on this, but initially I've been told it's going to be a little bit different because it's not a stationary, and some of the requirements on a brick and mortar restaurant are a little bit different here. One of the issues, obviously, too, Mr. Mayor, is the county is going to be responsible for the food.
Right.
And all the cities, the number one, not complaint, but one concern that the cities have is that, is the county going to have the resources to really monitor these food
yeah,
vendors?
exactly.
I don't know
Probably
that.
not.
I don't know. That's why we required them to get at least that county permit from the very beginning, so at least we know that the county's looked at it. Now, if things change and the person doesn't keep up with it, that's something that is going to be an issue.
Yeah, because we'll end up, or we could end up with somebody with ptomaine or who God
Well,
knows
and
what,
that's certainly, as in, one of the things that we did is that we're requiring them to carry insurance and also
Right.
indemnification.
Right.
One of the things, now I know what you're thinking, is, oh my gosh, how is some mom and pop pushing a vendor cart or having a temporary little structure going to be able to do that? Here's my take on what I think is going to happen. I think that just like the cannabis bills that have come out that pretty much decriminalized and legitimized it, what you're going to see is that you're going to see these type of business being corporatized. And by that, I mean that I think some of these small mom and pops are going to be swallowed up by companies, knowing that, hey, we can do this now. So we can actually make this a business enterprise and a corporate status. That's why, Councilmember Les, there's a lot in here, because I think that's what's going to happen. So there's going to be, I think, some heavy investing going on and some sophistication with respect to how these businesses are run. And so that's why we're requiring insurance, indemnification, and things like, because it's like, if you're going to do business and you're corporatizing it, you're going to be held accountable like any other business.
Okay.
Thank you. Make a motion to approve this item.
Second.
Motion to approve by Martinez, second by Hoffmeyer to adopt, I'm on the citywide sidewalk vending program. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Hansen.
Yes. Item number 7, resolution number 19.019, in support of the formation of and inclusion in the Lower Los Angeles River Recreation and Parks District. We have a staff report, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor and Council, I'll be handling this next item. Back in September of 2016, the governor signed Senate Bill 1374, and that bill actually established the Lower Los Angeles River Recreation and Parks District. The idea behind the formation of this district is to have a unified body that would actually coordinate park developments and activities along the LA River. The district, as by law, includes 14 cities and the county of Los Angeles. Of the 14 cities in the district, 10 are directly adjacent to the river, and that includes Paramount. The other 4 cities, while they're not directly adjacent to the river, the legislation says that they're a part of the district because they extend into the district. The lead agency for the formation of this district is the city of Southgate, and in order for us to form the district, each city is required to adopt a resolution in support of the formation of the district. It should be noted that the district will seek other sources of grant funding for projects, and the district will also work with the Rivers Mountains Conservancy, which is a state agency that's been around for about 20 years, for project ideas, design, and funding. So the recommendation before you tonight is to read by title only and adopt resolution number 1919. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Been moved by Lemon, second by Hoffmeyer to read by title only and adopt resolution number 19.019. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Hansen.
Yes. Item number 8 is an oral report, code enforcement update.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's been some time since we gave you an update on our code enforcement efforts. Code enforcement has definitely evolved over the years. We're no longer getting a number of calls for chickens and roosters like we did back in the 1980s and 1990s. We've also found more effective ways to deal with some of the tougher cases, and this has been through a city prosecutor as well as through technological advances that you'll soon hear about. Both of these efforts have allowed us to resolve cases, quite frankly, more quickly than we have in the past. So not only have we seen different types of cases, but more recently been able to reduce the number of cases each officer handles. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Public Safety Director, Adriana Lopez, who will handle the full report. Adriana?
Thank you, John. Good evening, Mayor, council members. As John mentioned, I'll be giving you an overview of code enforcement, and I'll start by letting you know what the staffing level at this division is. It is a division within the Public Safety Department. Our division consists of a supervisor. We have 5 full-time code enforcement officers, and we also have a part-time code enforcement officer. In addition, we have 2 people that are dedicated for the paperwork. One is full-time and the other one is part-time. So although we have 5 full-time code enforcement officers in 2018, we mostly had 4 code enforcement officers due to vacancies. Okay, what is the goal of code enforcement? Our code enforcement officers are responsible to enforce the Paramount municipal codes, and that includes to maintain the aesthetics of our neighborhoods. And by that I mean overgrown lawns. We also address outside storage, unpermitted signs, and that's just to name a few. We also ensure that residents and businesses have the required permits on file. I'll continue with the goals. We also report violations to the appropriate outside agencies. And when we can't gain compliance, voluntary compliance, because that's always our number one goal, we do issue administrative citations. We could also issue parking citations. And our code enforcement officers also assist with special event permits. Here you can see the slide. This is the most common way or methods of receiving our request. One is by phone call, also in person. People do walk into the station and report some type of violation. Our city website, emails, and oftentimes a letter. And we also have city staff and outside agencies that make requests. So here you see how we receive our complaints or requests. We usually receive 57% of our complaints or services are generated by the general public, and then 43% are city staff or outside agencies. And outside agencies can include the sheriff's department, the fire department, ABC, those type of agencies. So this slide lets you know what happens or what happened in the last few years. As you can see here, we've seen in 2015, we had 911 cases. We saw a slight uptick. And then in 2018, you can see that it started coming down. One of the reasons is that I believe in 2018, we saw decreases because we launched a web-based program called Go Enforce, and that allows code enforcement officers the ability to track and work the case more effectively. So we went in electronically. That will let us know when our inspections are done, what kind of work is being, what kind of progress is a part of the case. In addition, public safety, and this is when I became director, I looked at working with the city prosecutor and to establish a structured process of working and obtaining voluntary compliance with anybody who has a code enforcement case. In addition, we established a structure way of transferring cases that were not gaining compliance to the city prosecutor, and that also takes the caseload. It gets transferred from our code enforcement officer to the city prosecutor. In addition, we meet with the city prosecutor once a month. And one of the things that I really worked on is establishing a new method of dealing with residents who often complain about the same person on the same block. So historically, we would open up a case on that person or that property, they would comply, and then in 2 weeks, we would have the same complaint and so forth. A lot of the complaints that we receive are neighbor-to-neighbor dispute. So now what we do is we track the complaints separately and not open an official code enforcement case. We still deal with the complaint, but just not by generating an official code enforcement case. So I believe those are some of the reasons why our numbers have dropped. As you could see here in 2019, we project that we're going to be at the same level as we were in 2018. And here I'm highlighting the continued efforts of our code enforcement. Our main goal is to maintain the integrity of our neighborhoods, also to effectively handle service requests in a timely manner and in a professional manner. And like I stated before, our number one goal is to achieve voluntary compliance. And in addition, I would like to continue to strengthen our relationship with outside agencies. I'm going to share a couple of examples of some of the code enforcement cases that we have. I just did the general block just so that I wouldn't use the specific address. To your left is before, the way this property was, and we would consider this a general maintenance issue. As you could see, there are different violations. And then the after. This is the same property, so as you could see, it was dead landscaping, and they needed to work on all the areas around the front yard. And then you have an after picture as well. This is another case at the 1500 block of Perilla. You have a before and an after. Same property, before and after. And this one here, I'm very proud of. This is in a backyard. This is a 13400 block of Weimar. We received this from a neighbor, and as you can tell, this is a backyard, the before picture and the after picture, which is, you wouldn't even think it's the same property. The same property here. So with that, it's recommended that the city council receive and file this report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions? None?
Pretty dramatic.
Yes.
Good, yeah. We need a motion to
Make
receive and
motion to
file?
receive and file.
Heard a motion, I didn't hear a second.
Second, third,
Where'd it come,
Councilmember Gillen.
motion by Hoffmeyer and second by Gillen to receive and file this report. We have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemmons.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer.
Yes.
Mayor Hansen.
Yes. Item number 9, another oral report, Heritage Festival update, staff report.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we're just weeks away from our 3rd annual Heritage Festival, actually 2 weeks away. We've given you bits and pieces of information over the last year or so, or maybe 6 months, about the festival, but now we are going to give you a comprehensive report, because we're getting closer to it, to present to you a lot of the details about the event. This year's event has some major changes and some new components that we've kept you up to date upon. So with that, I will turn it over to our Community Services and Recreation Assistant Director, Yesenia Guillen, who's filling in for David Johnson today. Ms. Guillen?
Thank you, John. Mr. Mayor and council members, this evening I'm going to walk you through our upcoming Heritage event that's scheduled for June 1st. Let me start by giving you some background. We had our very first annual Heritage Festival in 2017. We were celebrating our 60th anniversary. We held the event at Paramount Park from 4 to 10 p.m. We had 2 bands performing and 1 stage. In 2018, this became an annual event for the city, once again being held at Paramount Park with 2 bands and 1 stage. If you notice, we did shorten the time from 4 to 8 p.m. because we've seen a significant diminishment of attendance towards the later hours of the evening. As we're entering our 3rd annual Heritage Festival this coming June 1st, we're doing something a bit different. We're moving it to the downtown. The event will include street closures with 3 bands. We will have 2 stages with a variety of entertainment on both stages. Street closures will be very similar to our tree lighting event. In the upcoming slides, I will present and discuss the festival layout. As you know, we have a state historical landmark that is our hay tree, and one of the many reasons we wanted to move it to the downtown. As well as having our connection to our downtown, similar to our Farmers Night Market that we hold once a month, we wanted to move the event downtown. The event will be from 12 noon to 4 p.m., which is quite different than previous years, but we hope to increase the attendance at our event with this new time frame. Going into our 3rd year in our Heritage Festival, being that it's held in our downtown, the first time, we know that safety is important. The street closures will include Paramount Boulevard from Melandra to Harrison and ready to reopen at 8 p.m. As I mentioned, we did notice a diminishment of attendance in the later hours of the event. Being that our events are family-oriented and a community of working families, 12 to 4 seemed like a great time for families to enjoy their Saturday with us. As I mentioned, the event is on Paramount Boulevard from Melandra to Harrison, and closures will begin at 6 a.m. Businesses in the area that are being affected by the event have been notified. We have hand-delivered letters and mailed letters, and a 3rd reminder will happen a few days prior to the event. Currently, we have not received any issues. Here, you see the layout of the event, and I'll walk you through the layout. South on Paramount Boulevard, closer to Harrison, you have stage number 1. Northbound on Paramount Boulevard, closer to Alondra, you have stage number 2. If you look at the bottom of your screen, closer to Harrison, I'll walk you through some of the activities that we'll be having. Looking at your left side of the street, closer to Town Center West, we will have a performance at our historical landmark, our hay tree, that'll go into details in the upcoming slides. In the blue area, we have a beer and wine location where beer and wine will be sold. If you continue on the west side of the street, you will see we have Bautista Farm in purple. They will have a milk demonstration where kids will be able to milk a cow. They will also have regular milk and chocolate milk for sale. We have our Dairy Council of California once again coming out with an educational presentation about dairy cows. We will also have a Taste of Paramount, which is located in red, and food trucks for residents. We'll have an opportunity to purchase food and taste a variety of foods from our local restaurants. In the game booth area that you see here in blue also, we have a traditional ring toss games that we have typically like a Halloween festival. Then you see stage number 2, closer to Alondra. If you look on your right side of the screen, closer to Town Center East, we have our face painting area in the teal color that will be run by a local artist for a small fee. You have a craft area where kids will be able to make fun crafts such as cute headbands with cow ears. You will also see an area of a carnival games in green, including games like balloon blast, similar to what you would see at a fair. For the younger kids, we have an inflatable zone in yellow that include jumpers and a corn maze for them to enjoy. We also have our teen challenge zone in orange, where the older kids will enjoy to ride a mechanical bull. We also have informational booths in blue, as you see, such as the YMCA, a local youth leagues. We also have our city booth where you'll be able to purchase our Heritage Event shirt. We left a sample for you on your desk or on your counter. Looking at the layout, you see the yellow stars. These locations will be photo opportunities for residents to take pictures. For example, one will have Petunia, our Heritage mascot. And the next 3 slides, I'll provide more information in which each area will include. Now to highlight some of our activities, we have our Taste of Paramount that is being organized by the Chamber of Commerce that will bring some of our local restaurants out to our downtown to sell their food. And our beer garden that will be selling beer and wine out of a 1950 style vehicle, much like the one that you see on the right side bottom of your screen. Like I mentioned previously, Bautista Farms will be hosting milking demonstrations, and the Dairy Council of California will be conducting educational presentations. We also have Chick-fil-A, the cow, coming out and making an appearance, providing giveaways, providing raffle baskets, and having food for purchase. To continue with the activity area, the 2 stages consist of 3 bands, local dance groups. Much like you see at a Halloween festival, the kids will be able to play traditional carnival games all free and receive candy, as I mentioned. Our informational booths as well will be out there, including our city booth, YMCA, and our local service clubs. Something really interesting, our staff came across this gentleman. His name is John Penn. He has composed this song on our state historical landmark, our hay tree. He will be performing the hay tree song at our event under our historical landmark, where kids are invited to follow along with a cow finger puppet like the one that you see in front of you. And here's a short clip.
Well, no one knows how it came about. The Haymarket Center was in Paramount. This California town, once called Hines, the market price from the shade of mine. Hey tree, maybe everybody come visit me. Shady and a guarantee to keep you cool and dry.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
To kick off our musical lineup, on stage number 2, we have the Hollywood Stones, a tribute to the Rolling Stones. And here's this short clip.
Okay.
Our next band is Nubis, a tribute to Caifanes, which will be on stage number 1. I'm sorry. Something fun about this band is 3 members are Paramount High School alumni, and this band will come back during the summer for summer concerts as well. And here's a short clip. And we end the afternoon with a tribute to Maná that is back on stage number 1, and here's a short clip. And coming back after almost 50 years is a parade. Like years past, there was a hay and dairy fiesta and the Flag Day Parade. This year will be the Paramount Heritage Parade. This is being organized by a local committee that wanted to embrace and bring back the parade. The parade will kick off at Paramount Park at 10 a.m. and go south on Paramount Boulevard to Madison and make a U-turn back to Paramount Park. Over 50 groups participating in the parade, such as Paramount High School clubs, local service clubs, that Zamboni machine, and many more will be participating in this year's parade. The parade is estimated to end at 12 noon and just in time for a fun-filled third annual Heritage Festival. And this concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Wow. Interesting.
These little finger puppets are so cute.
Yeah, they are
Yeah.
good.
So we'll be distributing these to the children.
Correct, and they'll be under the hay tree with
Very
Mr. John
nice.
Penn.
I'm excited. Looks really.
Any other
Really good.
questions or comments? Looks like it's pretty
Looks
well
like it's gonna be a
organized.
good
You
event.
guys
Yes,
always do a
I'm
good job.
A long day.
Yes,
Yeah,
long day.
It'll be a long one. Another receive and file?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Lemon, second by Martinez to receive and file the oral report. We have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemmons,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Hansen.
Yes. Comments or committee reports, council members? Which way we want to go?
Okay, so this is where we are. A little perturbed, actually a lot. The whole issue I ran, one of the main concerns I had was air quality. And the city has worked really hard along with the community to get those levels down to almost normal background levels with a few spikes here and there. Abatement issues, orders were put into place in 2016, continued to 2017. Stipulated orders. Recently, Monitor 8, I believe this monitor belongs to Aerocraft, and originally after abatement court, Aerocraft agreed to the order of abatement to lower their Chrome 6 emissions. Although they've been shut down 4 times for violating the abatement order, that order ceased earlier this year. Aerocraft has 4 times emitted levels that would have resulted in a temporary shutdown. So once that order was lifted, 4 times they would have been shut down again for the levels that they're emitting chromium 6. I asked the city manager if anyone had reached out to Aerocraft or AQMD. My fear is that without monitoring these companies, it's going to go back to exactly where we were, 350 times above where we should be of a known carcinogen in our air. 4.12 from March 1st through March 7th, 4.37 from April 27th through May 3rd, 4.29 from May 6th through May 15th, and I need to make sure, and I want to impress to our city how important it is for us to monitor the readings that AQMD puts out. We have to be proactive so that we don't get to that place that we were 2 years ago. This was brought to the attention of Dr. Jason Lowe from AQMD, and they are aware and they're investigating the spikes. My fear is once these monitors are gone, we're back to square one. So I just want to I'd like to make sure that the community is aware of what's going on. I'd like to make sure that we continue as a community to hold these companies responsible. We're talking about the little guy, and we want to make sure that, you know, they're in compliance, they're not a brick and mortar. Well, this is a brick and mortar, and these are known companies. And so we need to hold them accountable. We need to have somebody sit down and say, what's been happening for the last few months once the order was lifted? Why are we going in the wrong direction? And we want to make sure we don't continue going into the wrong direction. So I really hope that Kevin or John or somebody can reach out to Aerocraft and the AQMD after I mentioned it to you, and I hope we continue to follow up on this, because it's not good news for anybody if we continue to go back to where we once were. Thank you.
That is being done, correct?
Yes, sir. In fact, we did contact AQMD today. They're obviously closed on Mondays, as we know. So we did contact them this morning twice and left messages with our contact in one of the divisions. And then I left a message with one of my contacts too in executive management. So we're waiting to hear back from them. The message that we got back from them was that they should be posting a reason for why this spikes were there on their website by the end of today. So as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, we still haven't seen for the reason for why it did spike. So we're very curious to know. We're very concerned about this as well.
Yeah.
So.
But John,
Okay.
my problem is that if I wouldn't have brought it to, if the community hadn't have brought it to my attention and I hadn't looked just a couple days ago, then nobody would known anything about it. We have to be proactive and stay on it. It shouldn't take community members calling me and then me researching and then saying, oh, wow, this has been going on for the last 3 months and we knew nothing about it. We need to stay on top of it. That's what concerns me.
Is there anybody besides Aerocraft that is exceeding like Anaplex? Have they had any big spikes or anything like that?
2 months ago, they had a big spike, but this has kind of been more of the issue that once the abatement order was lifted, it seems like 3 times they would have been shut down because there's no longer that abatement order where AQMD comes in and says, okay, now we're going to temporarily shut you down. Now they know that order's not in effect. And so my issue is I don't want this to be a continuing
Yeah, exactly.
effort on their part.
Okay.
I
Which way are
just
we
have
going?
one question on that
Okay,
topic,
on that
Mr.
to-
Mayor.
okay.
Yeah. The dates and the numbers that Councilmember Guillen mentioned, are they part of the rolling average? Does it go over the amount that was set for them for the rolling average? I'm trying to figure out why AQMD wouldn't have red flagged us. Do we not have that information yet? Has it been calculated?
Yeah, we don't have that information
It's
yet. but
posted. It was 3 days.
Yeah, the actual raw data is in there.
Right.
But as
What I'm
Councilmember,
asking is if it's in the 3-day rolling average.
Yeah, it would-
still exceeds.
yes, but as Councilmember Guillen pointed out, they're not under abatement order, so they aren't under curtailment, if you will.
Right,
where
I
they shut
understand
them-
the
okay.
company's not. I
Yeah.
just thought that the AQMD would be more aggressive in notifying us,
Right.
being as
You
they never
would think,
notified
and
us
they-
when the
right.
first issue happened.
Exactly.
And we made it very clear to them, we never wanted that to happen again.
Right, and that's one of the points that I'm going to be expressing when I do get the phone call back from executive management, that we have gone down a long road, and we have trusted one another to keep each other in contact with each other and express our disappointment with for not keeping us aware of any
Good.
issues like this. They are the regulatory agency, and we thought we had a very good working relationship with them where they will inform us when they have spikes. So
And I
I'll
think
express
even
my
if
disappointment.
they're, because I got the impression that you're saying that they have a reason why these spikes happen, that they're going to communicate through via
Yeah.
their website. Was that correct?
That's the message that we got. It wasn't clear though, and it wasn't
Okay,
specific.
because I
so.
just, regardless, if there's a company issue going on, like I know we had before where they were testing equipment, that was happening in Anaplex, which accounted for the spikes. I think that they need to understand, we still expect notification.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100% agree. Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank
How
you.
many monitors do they still have around the city?
Oh, I can count them right here from this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's still the same that they told us they were going to leave in place when they made the presentation in June of last year, so almost a year ago.
I
So,
see them over there changing them,
Yeah.
checking monitors all the time.
Right.
so.
Yeah, let them know that we want to know what's going on.
we definitely will.
Okay,
I'll
thank you.
express that to them.
I'd like to make a
Yes, go.
comment to Mayor. Last Tuesday,
Yes.
Mayor Hansen and I attended the annual scholarship luncheon for the Paramount Women's Club. And the Paramount Women's Club honored 4 high school seniors scholarships. And those seniors will receive $500 towards their college education. I love the Paramount Women's Club. They're so optimistic, so happy. It was
That was
fun.
part of
It
my
was a fun
report.
one. Oh, was it? Oh.
I'll go last,
Just
that's
say
okay.
echo
I'll
what
go last,
Councilmember
not a
Martinez
problem. I'm
stated.
just, okay, fine. Any further comments or committee reports? Hoffmeyer? Nope. Lemon?
Nope,
Nope.
I'm good.
Well, I would add what I might add to that, I did, like she says, I did attend the Paramount Ones Club and presented there. Actually, there were supposed to be 4, but only 3 could make it. One was unable to, and we presented them with certificate or proclamations from the city, which they seemed to thoroughly enjoy, and they were very excited to get those scholarships. It's really fun to watch the students and their faces light up when they get these kind of awards. And actually, I don't have the date with me. I didn't bring it. It's coming up pretty soon. The high school has their annual awards night
28th,
on the
Tuesday the
28th, Tuesday the 28th, which that's where I've been attending it for several years now, in that our class from when I graduated there, we continued a scholarship from one of our classmates that was killed in the Vietnam conflict, which should not have happened on a ship. But we have continued a scholarship in his name, so we have a few of us that show up to help present those scholarships, but there's a lot of scholarships given out. Also, the past several days, attended the California Contract Cities Association Conference in Indian Wells. All the sessions I attended, I particularly enjoyed the 2 sessions, Keeping California Safe, and From Local Government to State Legislation. And the fact that it was announced, actually we knew about it a little beforehand, that SB 50 has been tabled or pulled for now in this year's session, and that was from Senator Portantino. I couldn't pronounce his name.
Italian, Portantino.
Portantino, yeah, exactly. And we wanted to thank him for that, too, because that was going to be a disaster as far as I'm concerned. So it was an interesting weekend, and got a lot of information there. And I have nothing else further. Staff have any comments?
No, sir.
Nothing from anybody? Then we are adjourned to, what's the date? To our next regular meeting, which will be held on June 4th at 6 p.m. right here in council chambers.
These are so cute, aren't they?
Yeah, if I had a little grandkid to give it to.